When fishing for carp in the winter, you should always consider the venue first, you know. It's all good fishing for big carp in these low stock pits, but realistically the chances are really thin on the ground. So I always adjust my approach on venue choice coming to this time of year. So I try to pick venues that are shallow, try to pick venues that are well stocked, and in a perfect world they won't be deep or weedy. You know, if they're really deep, there's the big potential for them to be off the bottom, and if they're really weedy, I think often the fish lie up in the weed and become quite dormant. And on the venues that are shallower and more well stocked, the fish are still searching around for food, and they're just more likely to encounter your bait. Although I'm known for big carp fishing, realistically in the winter it's very difficult to catch big carp. So I like to spend short day sessions on runs waters. We're here today at Newlands Hall Carp Fishery in Chelmsford, Essex, and it's a venue or a complex where I actually caught my first ever carp when I was 9 years old. You know, venues like this are absolutely perfect. You can come down, you don't need to be in any particular peg, you can find the fish, flick out some very minimal sort of tactics, and you can go home with a wet net. People say that in the winter the weather is one of the most important aspects, and I would agree on some venues, but on the well-stocked ones, you know, you can catch them at any time of year. If those carp are hungry, it doesn't matter if it's the lake's only just defrosted. You know, I've caught them when there's been parts of the lake frozen on the well-stocked venues. So to be honest, unless you're really fishing for the low-stock, difficult venues, then you can catch them no matter what the weather is. The ideal weather in the winter, ideally, would be sort of 12 to 14 degrees, mild wind, not too strong, you know, and a consistent temperature overnight. You know, I think that's the real key. You know, the nights are so long. You know, it's all good on, say, a sunny day where temperatures may reach double figures, but if you've only got 8 hours of daylight and you've got 16 hours of darkness where it's dropping down into the minus temperatures, the water's going to cool really quickly. So if I'm looking specifically to target the best weathers, then I'm looking for consistent overnight temperatures. We all know in winter that the single hook bait can be absolutely deadly, and I've caught loads of fish doing that. You know, today I'm here on a well-stocked venue. I'm using very minimal amounts of bait, just tiny little bags, flicking them about, and it's catching. But there are times in the winter when the fish are still hungry. You know, I can think of one particular year where I fished the Rockford Lake down in Ringwood, and I was using a bait boat to deliver massive patches of boilies, you know, like 2-3 kilos, and then 2 or 3 kilos of tigers as well. And on that particular lake there was a huge head of bream, and I felt that the open water was so desolate and so barren that when you fish with pellets and stuff like that, the bream just ate them immediately. So that made me think that if the bream are doing that, then they're obviously eating everything else that's out there. So there obviously isn't a lot of food. And I'm fishing a lake with 100, 120 carp, multiple 30s, loads of 40s, really hungry, you know. So I just went out there with loads of bait, even in the winter, and it certainly worked. Over the years, you know, I've caught loads of fish on single pop-ups, and the colour can be so crucial, and also the depth off the bottom. You know, there's times when yellow's been the one, there's time when white is the best one, and there's also times when I found pink to be great. But generally, personally, I've always found that a pop-up, its greatest benefit is also its greatest downfall. It's off the bottom. So by being off the bottom, you give a fish a reason not to take it. So if I can give you any advice with pop-ups, would be have a few different colours that you're going to try and keep them fairly close to the bottom. The goo really comes into its own in the winter. You know, I still use it in the warmer months, and I tend to use it on my hook baits to draw attention to it over a big bed of feed. But in the winter, when I've not got a lot of feed, again, it still has that same impact. You know, added attraction around the hook bait, drawing the fish to its presence, and yeah, you won't go far wrong with a gooed up hook bait in winter. Still use boilies in the winter, and most of the time when I do so, I use cell. You know, they're a nice pale colour, they're a proven track record all times of year, and I just think the carp absolutely love them. I do tend to put less out in the winter generally, but that's on a general sort of basis. I wouldn't come to a commercial venue and just pump out a couple of kilos of boilies and fish like that. I tend to fish with more bits and pieces on those type of venues, But on the flip side of that, when I was fishing at Sutton at Hone in Kent, you know, it's quite a big fish venue, probably 50 carp in 4 or 5 acres, and it was absolutely ram-packed with bream, and that meant that you couldn't fish with any bits and pieces. Any little bag of pellets, anything like that cast into reasonably deep water in the middle would instantly be picked up by a bream. But because I knew that, because the bream were eating all the natural food and eating all of the available like tuck in the lake, I would bait heavily around the snags with boilies, 2 to 3 kilos, often sort of 24, 48 hours before I'd come down. And this definitely helped me to draw the fish from the snags from being lethargic, let them know that there's food there, they'd come and get on it, and I'd turn up with my little naked chods and my little cell cork ball pop-ups, and I had it away that year. There certainly seems a time as you get into like the back end of the autumn, sort of November into December, that the carp, I don't know, they can be a little bit indifferent to boilies. You know, you can be on them and they just don't seem to be taking them as readily. And in that sort of situation, there's 2 baits I turn to. One would be sweet corn and the other would be maggots. The maggots, in my opinion, if you've got bubblers out in front of you and fish topping, but you can't get a pickup, if you can't get a take on a maggot bag, then you're going to get a take on nothing else. They seem to be really generate a feeding response. You know, that big sock of maggots, it spreads out on the bottom to the size of a plate, and it can just generate a feeding reaction when nothing else will.